Hey, eighth period. Like I mentioned yesterday, I'm out today and tomorrow at a conference in San Francisco. Don't get too jealous, just a bunch of history nerds getting together. Literally, I know you're jealous. Anyways, here's what you're going to do in class today, which is also a worthy task of history nerds, so be thrilled about that. We're going to talk about mercantilism and economics really quick in this video, touching on a few things we didn't get to in class yesterday, and then I'm going to set you off on a task to get a chunk of work in your packet done. And good news is a lot of this topic today is review, because we've talked about mercantilism. All right, key announcements. So, due tomorrow, you're going to keep chugging along in McKay 567 to 571, skipping 568. And don't forget that tomorrow is an LEQ, hints on question to come shortly. All right, if you haven't yet, grab your packets, turn to page 19. So go ahead and press pause and then come right on back. Okay, welcome back, folks. So as promised, some hints as to what you may experience tomorrow with your LEQ. So I hope I sound like a broken record when I continue to talk about this timeline and what we're really focusing on with chapter 17 right now. So we've looked at some long-term effects of 1648 that really don't start to manifest themselves until the 18th century. And those are effects on demographics and effects on the economy that start to change what we call socioeconomic history. So today we're going to focus more on the economic side of socioeconomics. So as you know, before 1648, the economy of Europe was primarily agricultural, and we're going to also talk about the guild system today. Guilds are something that go back to the Middle Ages. Post 1648, we have a shift towards mercantilism and also some new Enlightenment ideas about the economy that go back to Adam Smith. But as mercantilism is born in the age of absolutism, it continues through a series of mercantilist wars and colonization to also change the lives of not only Europeans, but also non-Europeans, which is what you've been reading about lately. So some few ideas that we could talk about. So the pre-1648 economy, defined by agriculture, feudalism, but also by guilds. And guilds are something that do hang around after 1648, but they're starting to fade away as more modern economic systems replace them. So as we already saw yesterday with our set of documents about the putting out system, that started to really challenge the status of guilds because products could be made for much more cheaply using cottage industry in the rural countryside. So what are guilds? Guilds are these organizations of essentially craftspeople that specialize in one very specific craft. So it could be a window maker or a furniture maker or a cloth textile maker. So they all had intense specialization that required lots and lots of training. And guilds were more than just production centers, kind of like pre-modern factories. They were also very much a part of society and civic life. So here's a famous painting of a Dutch guild, and this man in front is holding this huge gold coin, which he's taking a lot of pride in. It's sort of the emblem of the guild. And this is actually a textile guild. We have that hint from the tablecloth there. And so members of guilds had very high status in society, and it was kind of a status that challenged the nobility, the status that came with work, a very rare status. But they also had a very high standard of living as they were specialized in an artisan or a craft. And they played a lot of roles in the public life. So here's a procession of guilds through some Italian city-state. I can't remember which one. But they also organized festivals and religious holidays and celebrations. So they really brought the community together. They would have these parades down the street, each showing their guild. Kind of like a parade today where each sort of organization or different sports team is marched by and everybody cheers with pride, kind of like at pep assemblies, which you all go to, right? Okay, so guilds were really important, but a lot of traditional European life was being challenged, and the whole concept of the guild was being challenged by people like Adam Smith. Think about Adam Smith like an Enlightenment philosopher. He's interested in empirically studying the economy, and like all philosophers, believed that there are natural laws that exist that drive economic change. And Adam Smith believed that he found those natural laws and that the economy needed to be adjusted to better align with the natural laws. And his belief about these natural laws can be summed up as economic liberalism or economic freedom. So he really opposed the guilds because there's really nothing free about them. In order to become a guild member, for example, you needed an intense amount of training that usually required your father or family member being a member of a guild already. So they weren't organizations that were open to free labor. They set really strict standards on what they produced, and they also held monopolies over what they produced. So there was nothing free or organic about the system, and this is what Adam Smith disliked about it. So a few key concepts of Adam Smith. Another way to phrase economic liberalism is a laissez-faire economy, which is a French term for hands-off, that the less regulation and intervention there is in the economy, the better. He believed that the economy should be grown or directed by this concept of the invisible hand, which we often summarize as supply and demand. So if supply of laborers goes up, then wages go down. That's just a natural relationship that should be unmessed with by any organization. Now, there's a lot of misconceptions about Adam Smith that he believed that government should really recede from people's lives. That's not quite true. He believed government should certainly recede from regulating the economy, but he saw lots of needs for government. He was a big believer in government providing public education, for example. He really believed government should play a very strong role in people's lives, just not in regulating the economy. So not only would he be against guilds, but he'd be against mercantilism. So at the end of the day, we walk away knowing that Adam Smith's ideas were really never applied in practice, not in the age of absolutism, or really any time after that. But certainly economists will hearken back to Smith over and over again in order to adjust the economy or try to improve it. But it's a really important idea that's out there that will sustain itself and become more important throughout the centuries we learn about. So essentially we're back to mercantilism, and that's what you're going to focus on today, and how mercantilism started to create an increasingly global economy. Of course, this is a bit of a continuity. A global economy existed since Christopher Columbus in the Age of Exploration, but the extent to which Europeans came to dominate the global economy has really changed after 1648. So you've been reading about things like this, the true interconnectedness of the world economy, where goods are, especially raw materials, are extracted from the colonies to the benefit of the state, brought to the home country, manufactured in some way, whether it's a cottage industry or a guild, and then exported once again. Because the goal of mercantilism is a favorable balance of trade, to increase exports and decrease imports. Governments, going all the way back to Louis XIV, saw an important role in creating that favorable balance of trade. And this really enriches the European economy and improves people's lives. For one, it's one of the reasons why food supply goes up. At the same time, it has very different effects on non-Europeans across the world, and you've been reading about that lately. So your task today is first, let's do this. Let's start on page 19. We're going to get to Costa paintings in a second. So before you get to Costa paintings, page 19, we've got a simple sausage making exercise where you're going to take this chart, use McKay, feel free to also do outside research or use prior knowledge, and just review the series of mercantilist wars across the 17th and 18th century and how they shift the European balance of power by tracking who the key players were involved in that war, key countries, what caused or motivated that conflict, the ultimate outcome, specific treaties are needed in certain circumstances, so review your buzzwords, and how did that conflict shape the balance of power or shift the balance of power from one region of Europe to the other. So hopefully that's a good review, but it helps you see change over time in the diplomatic balance of power and also mercantilism. When you're done with that, you can skip the LEQ outline on page 20. That might be something really good to do to review for the chapter 17 multiple choice test. So you're going to head to what is related to this image on the screen, an SAQ practice on pages 21 and 22, shifting the focus away from how mercantilism impacted European politics to how mercantilism impacted non-Europeans all over the world. You read about Costa paintings, so this SAQ is about looking at European views of non-Europeans, and the impacts of mercantilism on non-Europeans. And then finally, you're going to start looking more closely at, on page 23, to what extent did 18th century mercantilism and the expansion of the Atlantic economy alter the lives of Europeans and non-Europeans? So that's sort of a summarizing activity. See how far you get. Hopefully you can complete it. Like the last prompt we worked with, it also has a document set that starts on page 26. So just like before, work through the document set, decide if it's an impact on Europeans or non-Europeans, chart that out, and then bring outside knowledge to the table in order to write your subclaims and your claim. So hopefully by the end of the day, you work through this topic of mercantilism, its impact on the balance of power, and its impact on both Europeans and non-Europeans. Okay. If there are any questions, I should be available by email. I will try my best. But other than that, I will see you on Monday. Best of luck tomorrow.